You're watching Open Agenda. Here's our host, Joe White.
Welcome to Open Agenda. I'm your host, Joe White. In the studio with us now is Mike Goldberg from Del Mar. Thank you.
Of course.
Dr. Jovanosa from Salisbury. Thanks for being here.
Yes, sir.
We were both at the January, or all three of us were at the January 6th meeting where we listened to the county council override the county executive's veto of the audit legislation. We were there back in December and back in the summer through the work sessions for this bill. A little surprising that it got vetoed over the holidays, right?
It was a Christmas surprise, I'll say that.
Yeah, well, after Christmas.
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry.
Michael Langford and Trish Melvin were there at this last meeting. I want to bring them in, and I want to get their perspective on what did they see, because I'm not sure, to someone who hasn't been going to the meetings on a regular basis like we have, who sat through the work sessions and seen this bill get introduced and have a public hearing, that they would even understand what's going on. And I don't think they had access to the press release, but I'd like to ask them about that.
I'm looking forward to hearing what they have to say.
All right, will you guys come back in after they're here?
You betcha.
All right. So stay with us. When we come back, we're going to bring in Trish Melvin and Michael Langford, and we're going to ask them about what they witnessed. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. In the studio with us now is Michael Langford from Salisbury. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Trish Melvin from Fruitland. Thank you for coming out.
Sure.
So you were both at the meeting on Tuesday, January 6th, and you saw the veto override. And I know you weren't there in the December meeting. I was there to see that one, but I want to get a perspective. And Trish, did you understand even what they were overriding?
It was a little bit unclear to me. I wasn't up to date on the information that was being presented about the legislation. What was very helpful to me is John Cannon prepared a PowerPoint.
Yes.
It was very clear, concise, and factual.
What this does is give you relatively a chronological presentation of what developed with Legislative Bill 2025-14. It was introduced by the council, and it was introduced by the council to give the internal auditor more authority to perform an audit review on the county council. That was the purpose of this bill. We thought that it encouraged transparency, and it also created greater efficiencies on the behalf of the county council. Don't understand what could possibly be wrong with that. The action was taken by the council actually at the request of the administration, and the executive has now issued a veto on this bill. Second, more continued background, the internal auditor had been working on this legislative bill with the executive's administrative staff and legal department since March of 2025. That was over 10 months ago. So there was plenty of time to vet this and to have a shared discussion as to whether or not this was the right way to move forward. The legislative work session began on September the 16th. At that point in time, the administration and the legal department received the draft. There was a public introduction on November the 18th, again, opportunity to have any discussions. And then on December 16th, there was a public hearing and a final vote. At this point in time, the executive was actually in attendance at the meeting, but chose not to make any comments. The reason I say this is because the executive had shared with one agency that the proper legislative process did not involve the executive interfering with the entire legislative bill process until it came to her table. It couldn't be any further from the truth as to how we have acted over the last 20 years, and certainly how we've presented legislative bills over the last 3 years. So that's the reason for getting to the weeds here. At no time, in reference to this legislative bill, at no time did members of the county council, to my knowledge, receive any phone calls, any text messages, any emails, nor did we hear any public comments with any objections from the executive in this manner. But we have a veto. And that wouldn't be so bad except for the press releases that came after that and the blog comments that came after that, again, an attempt to sort of disparage the county council as far as just trying to do their legislative responsibilities. In a very clear statement that was sent to me, the statement was from the executive that it's important for the public to understand that the county executive does not influence legislation while it is before the council. My responsibility begins only after a bill is passed and delivered to my office, and that is why the veto was issued at the appropriate time and stating, consistent with the county charter, Well, there's no reference to this type of process in the county charter. And as I said before, there are numerous opportunities for this discussion to be held as we have done in the past.
So, Michael, you got to see President Cannon's presentation. It was about 6 minutes long, and he went through the timeline when they started this process with the executive's branch to get this legislation passed. Did you get a sense that what they were looking for when they started this process was to put both the executive and the legislative branch under the same parameters for audits?
Yeah, it seems standard. Like, as an accountant who's been involved in audits for large companies, there's nothing from what I've seen in the briefing book or when, again, the Council President Cannon's, presentation was great and brought me up on the history of like the process of, the dates and stuff. But looking at it, it's like, it's an audit. It's pretty standard procedure. And if you're doing your job, you don't really have to fear audits.
It seemed like from the presentation, they were absolutely shocked that this got vetoed. Trish, were you aware that there was a veto? I know you don't do Facebook. So how did you even find out that the executive had issued a veto?
I saw it on the agenda of the council meeting.
Okay.
I don't do Facebook, and I'm afraid I'm a little bit at a loss on important communications like that.
This was not posted to the county council's website. We do know that it was put on the county executive's personal Facebook page, and other news coverage had covered it, and she was kind of directing everybody towards one in particular. I was interested to see just how you even, when you saw it on the agenda, did you even understand what they were?
I really did not.
Yeah,
I really did
interesting.
not.
Michael, when the executive did bring up some very poignant opposition, and I'm not sure if we understand it, all of her points, but she was concerned that there are some areas that there wasn't like the same global standards for the audits, but they're not auditable areas, I guess.
So that was the thing about her comments, is like these global audit standards. Whenever you hear a word like global or world or like international, these are normally nonprofits or like think tank type of organizations that kind of set, like, this is not like, it's not the FAA setting guidelines, right? It's not DOT that determine these.
Planes.
Yeah, this is not like the Federal Reserve, the U.S. Mint, or any kind of standard set by like a governmental body. So like, that was kind of a tip to me. I was like, as someone who's been an accountant, as someone who's done audits, I don't know what standards she's talking about.
So Trish, I want to ask you, you have some experience with audits, and I want you to explain what is your experience and what did you take from that from your past history?
Okay, I've never done a financial audit, but I have done environmental audits up and down the East Coast.
Okay.
And I've conducted mock OSHA audits.
Oh, wow. That sounds exciting.
And safety audits. And as part of the auditing process, there's typically a step where you interview the auditee and you look for red flags.
Sorry I wasn't in here earlier. I was the topic of conversation, so I guess it was the executive meeting rather than the council meeting. I will tell you, talking about Legislative Bill 2025-14 and the veto authority, I just want to make this very clear. This is not about opposing audits. This is not about protecting independence, transparency, or this is about protecting independence, transparency, and the balance of power that our county charter requires. And Mr. Benson kind of said that the bill can't be vetoed, or shouldn't be vetoed, but yet it was sent to me for approval. So if there are bills that are not supposed to be approved or vetoed, why are we sending it to the executive office? Because it could be vetoed. The charter does allow the county council to order audits and assign certain duties to the internal auditor without executive veto, but that exemption applies only to specific council actions, not new laws that rewrite the county code. Legislative Bill 2025-14 is a code amendment. Under the charter, that type of legislation follows the normal legislative process, including executive review and veto authority. This is not about personalities. It's not about personalities. It's about governance and the rule of law. Every executive, past, present, and future, has the same responsibility to ensure that laws comply with the charter. An internal auditor must be independent, not just in name, but in structure. When the same body being audited can waive the audit rules for itself or carve out activities that are not subject to professional standards, that independence is compromised. Despite public claims, that bill does not make the council fully subject to independent audit standards. In fact, it explicitly exempts certain council-related activities, like fiscal impact reviews, hotline investigations, and assistance to council members like gift card audits from the global audit standards. Every department and every branch of government should be held to the same auditing standards. That's all I asked. Creating carve-outs or exemptions for one branch undermines public trust. We are also in an election cycle and context matters. At least one sitting member of the county council is currently running for a statewide office, and several individuals who have publicly and inaccurately characterized this bill are running or considered running for council seats. When candidates or potential candidates publicly promote legislation using incorrect legal claims, it raises serious questions about judgment, preparedness, and respect for the charter. Supporting legislation that weakens auditor independence or creates the appearance of self-protection is not strength, it's a liability. Voters expect transparency, I hear it all the time in this room, accountability and equal application of the rules. Legislation like this invites skepticism, damages credibility, and creates unnecessary risk for anyone who supports it, especially those asking for the public for their vote. Strong candidates don't need carve-outs, they should welcome clear and independent oversight. That charter is our Constitution. No bill, no matter how well-intentioned, can override the charter or expand council authority beyond what voters approved.
And, unfortunately, I think I saw some red flags. Of course, Councilman Holloway spoke up about some red flags that he had difficulty, or historically there's been difficulty obtaining financial information out of the executive branch.
This is something over the years, since I've been on the council, that we've been really challenged with getting information. This makes it a lot more clear, and I hope in the future that we don't have those challenges.
Which he stated went back multiple
Years.
administrations, not just this one.
Previous executives as well. So that was a red flag, and just the unexplained veto. After all this effort had been put into the project for months, why veto it? And the explanation to me was not clear. I think we saw from John Cannon the facts from the charter in black and white. When I compare that to kind of a word salad, I feel that the facts were being obscured.
So you picked up on some red flags just from that standpoint. If you were doing an audit, you would just have more questions, I guess.
That's typically how we're trained. Once you see those red flags, you dig in and seek more information.
Gotcha. I think for me, if at the end of the day we know that the county council is going to be held to the same standard the executive branch, and vice versa, the executive branch is going to be held to the same standard as the council, I'm comfortable. Now, if we can make that even more transparent, then I think that's the opportunity, and I think that's what they were looking for. When you go back to President Cannon's presentation, he talked about the interaction with the legal department. Now, the legal department answers directly to the county executive. The council has their own lawyer, but the legal department itself, they answer just to the county executive. They weren't present in the override either.
You mean Tuesday night?
Yes.
That was all very confusing, that so much time over many months was spent with the administration attorney putting all this together for helping form the legislation. I thought that this was with input from the executive. I mean, does the administration attorney perform on behalf of the executive?
They do. I mean, they're supposed to work together. But it sounded like from the presentation that they had all worked together, which is a good sign.
What you're saying about the scope of an audit should be everyone in the government. And it basically is. And the council, determines that framework and how people act. And then the county exec is supposed to act within that framework as the council directs. And she's really, but like the way that she often presents herself as though she's an independent, because we changed it to an elected official position. Sure. Now she often does this, well, we have a balance of powers and I have to question the council and everything they do. But really the county exec is there to carry out the daily will of the council, who does not actually work there on the daily.
Sure.
I mean, that's the function. And I think that like the idea that there's no input from her, like, to make the legislation work, because if there are legitimate qualms, if she has legitimate qualms, if there aren't standards, why mention it now? Why just veto and kill and waste all this time, energy, and resources
Right.
of our local government when we already know we're strapped?
I mean, I definitely would want her concerns to be
Right.
looked into. But at the same time, maybe the ship had already sailed, I guess, is the problem. And it doesn't sound like there was actually a problem at all. I appreciate both of your perspectives from having been there. I want to bring back in Mike Goldberg and Joe Venosa. They were at the December meeting and the January meeting, and I want to really get their perspective on just how they felt like that change had happened. So thank you for your insight. So when we come back, we're going to bring in Joe Venosa and Mike Goldberg, and we're going to talk to them about what they saw at the December meeting and how surprised they were at the veto override in January. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Open Agenda. Back in the studio with us is Mike Goldberg from Del Mar. Thanks for coming back.
Of course.
Dr. Joe Venosa from Salisbury. Thanks for being back.
Yes, sir.
So it was interesting to get a chance to talk to Michael and Trish because they were at the January 6th meeting where they got to see the veto override. I know we were all in person at the December meeting. When we were going through this process, I mean, whether it was the work sessions with Anjali back in September and October, or as we were even seeing the legislation get passed in December, did you? It seemed almost boring. Like this was just another part of the role of government. Like this was just something that was coming up, and then the veto was just surprising, right?
Well, the veto surprised me because, near as I could tell, this was a collaborative effort between the council and the administration, and then out of the blue. And based on false premises that the audit standards were not being applied equally, that simply is not the case.
Well, you went back and did some research. I know you asked for some follow-up information. This was after we saw the briefing book come out before the meeting Tuesday. The 5 points that are not part of the global standards, and whether you agree with, like as Michael said, that they're really not that big of a deal or what, these aren't audible parts of the bill, right?
Right. I mean, when you think audit, you're dealing with issues very objectively, but these points to which that were excluded, to which the executive did not agree with, those are very subjective items. I don't know how you apply a standard to those kind of things.
Do you think they would if they could?
If they could, I believe they would.
Because one of them was just running the employee hotline.
Right.
How do you, I guess you audit whether she's doing it or not doing it.
How many operators were hanging up on the call on the suicide hotline or something? I mean, maybe that would be objective. This is a completely subjective approach, and it's a responsibility that is being assigned to the auditor that is in fact a non-audit function. Think of it like this. The Vice President of the United States serves as the Vice President, but also the President of the Senate. That has nothing to do with him being Vice President. It's more than one function. How many of us in any job have not worn more than one hat?
Sure.
And this is all.
So, and on these hats, it just doesn't fall under the global standards of auditors.
Not that I can tell at all.
Joe, what was your take on what you saw? I mean, what was there parts of this that concerned you, or from either aspect, the override or the
The override, nothing about the actual legislative action at the last meeting surprised me. What surprised me in hindsight, because I got information on this afterward, and I'll explain it in a second, is this. Who was not in the room? Did you notice?
Well, Paul Wilbur was not there.
Paul Wilbur was not in the room.
Yeah,
and
he's the head of the legal department.
Correct. And Andrew Illuminati, although he was in the room partially, he was not there in those moments. I think that's instructive.
Okay.
And why I say that is because I also have some contacts in Mr. Wilbur's office, and I can tell you, and please verify this, they were caught off guard at her veto. Paul Wilbur specifically was caught off guard, but other people related to the process were caught off guard because she never told them. So you could make the argument that it was a reckless veto in the sense that she never informed the very people that were working on it with her and the council for months. So that speaks to some more disturbing behavior.
So you're making the assertion that because they weren't there, it was tactful that they weren't there because they didn't want to be called out for this miss, I guess.
That's part of it. Absolutely. I think it speaks volumes that they weren't there to even field questions.
Okay.
And I have to wonder what went on in that room in her office that afternoon and evening, because I think that some of those concerns boiled over. And I'm just speculating now, but the people that I've spoken with who have better knowledge than I have indicated that there are some real internal problems right now over how she handled the veto.
No question about that. Look, I think this speaks to the county executive's style of governing. Rather than governing on principle, rather than basing her actions on competence and understanding of the issues, in my opinion, what she does is try to create chaos, keeping everybody on the ropes, keeping everybody off balance. That is her methodology of maintaining control. That is extremely disturbing. That's no way to govern.
I don't doubt that. I think we've seen for the last 3 years that has been the pattern. But it doesn't explain why she would be so involved in the process on this particular piece of legislation and then suddenly, radically, without telling her own lawyers to change it. I think something else is going on.
Well, I will say, one assertion she made that I wouldn't want to ever see this happen with any county executive is that she's not supposed to be involved in recommending legislation to come forward. That's leadership. And if she was not willing to do that, or somebody else in the county executive's office not willing to do that, I wouldn't want them to not have that opportunity, and I would want them to want to do that part. You talk about balance. Bob Benson, who's the attorney for the county council, seemed to have the most balanced argument.
She had no authority to veto it under the county charter, and that's made clear in Chapter 411 under executive veto and under Chapter 305F. The language, notwithstanding that clear language, I am nevertheless recommending to the council that they vote to override the veto. I make this recommendation because the executive through the law department is responsible for the implementation of changes to Chapter 13 made by Legislative Bill 2025-14. As council will remember all too well, a mere 3 years ago, the executive misinterpreted equally clear language in the charter, and that misinterpretation only got resolved by extensive litigation that resulted in an opinion issued by the Maryland Appellate Court affirming council's interpretation of the charter. In order to avoid a circumstance where the executive refuses to implement the changes mandated by Legislative Bill 2025-14, a vote to override the veto will remove any opportunity for disagreement such that the executive is mandated to implement the changes adopted in Legislative Bill 2025-14. So to again restate it, she had no authority to veto it. She has vetoed it. To the extent that there could be any disagreement about what the language is of the code, whether she's authorized to veto it or not, my recommendation is that you vote to override the veto.
He actually went over the reasons why the veto itself was not even valid.
Yeah.
But also went through the process of why the council should still go through the override, because we saw this with the confirmation of the two appointees back 2 years ago.
I think that if they hadn't vetoed it, County Executive Giordano would have probably filed another lawsuit against the taxpayers, meaning the council. And this gets to my point as to why she's doing it. This is just my speculation. I think money's being moved. And I think she's very afraid of the auditor finding out where some of that money's going.
I don't know. That's a pretty bold assertion. But I will tell you this. My thinking is, I don't care if it was the county council, the county executive, or the person running the vending machine down the hallway. If someone's moving money, I hope that the auditor finds it, and I hope that they're held accountable, because right now in this community, we have a lot of folks who are struggling just to pay for the groceries. So if somebody's moving money around, they should be called to.
And that's the thing. I'm not necessarily suggesting that the executive is moving money in an unethical or possibly legally dubious manner. But what I'm saying is that if any executive were doing that, if they were, they would be afraid of that veto override because of what it could find out.
I just find it weird. We were never going to if it passed 6-0 to start with, and we had one county council person who was absent in December. Shaney Shields was at the January meeting. The only person who changed her mind was Councilman James.
Yes, the only thing that I'd be concerned about is the part where we added county auditor performance of other activities will not be subject to the global internal audit standards published by the Institute of Internal Auditors. That would be an oversight on me, I imagine, but that's a concern of mine.
To address Mr. Wynn's question, the additional duties that have been assigned are not items that are audit items. They are additional duties to review budgets, to discuss fiscal impacts, propose resolutions, to administer the hotline. They are not items that the auditor would be auditing under any circumstance, or just additional duties that she's being asked to propose. Consequently, she's not auditing those things and never would audit those things.
And then we've seen time and time again with him, he generally votes in the way that the county executive is leaning towards. Not all the time, but a lot of the time.
We some of us had sort of an office pool bet as to whether or not he would change his vote, and I won.
So, Michael, I want to ask you, we heard Trish earlier talk about that she was not privy to the executive's override. She never saw a press release. And this is someone who keeps up on that, whether it's the city of Fruitland or Wycomico County. She's keeping up on what the press releases are. She never saw it. And you spoke about it at the meeting. I want you to explain what your concerns there were and what you plan to do about it.
Well, the first place that it was posted was Eastern Shore Undercover, a blog site. From what I understand, the press release was sent to other media outlets, and his just happened to be the first one to post it. The problem is that on Julie Giordano's personal Facebook page, she was actually directing viewers to Eastern Shore Undercover to see her press release.
Instead of the county website.
It wasn't on the county website. In fact, it wasn't until 6 days later that it appeared on the county website. And of course, they're going to claim, well, it was just an oversight. No, it wasn't. This is not the first time this
why do
has
you
happened.
think it was done intentionally?
Well, we've seen a pattern on this. First of all, we know that Eastern Shore Undercover has been in the past a significant campaign contributor to the county executive's campaign. So there seems to be, we direct traffic to Eastern Shore Undercover, and he makes money, and in return, so it would seem, he is giving the county executive unfeathered support, no matter what. So essentially, he is acting as Eastern Shore Undercover is acting as a political operative for the county executive. That should have been posted immediately on the county's website or the official county executive Facebook page.
So if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is that this blog site, Eastern Shore Undercover, which has been accused by a lot of people in the community of profiting over people's personal tragedies, posting personal information in the midst of, suicides and first responders.
And having a contract with the county executive to do just that.
Well, that's kind of where I'm going. So with that history and reputation and controversy, now it seems like the executive is outsourcing her own communications that we theoretically as the taxpayers pay for.
Well, she had sent it to other outlets as well, but that was the only outlet that she encouraged people to go read the whole
that's the thing.
story.
So just for clarification, she never encouraged her followers to go to any other blogs or news outlets?
That would be correct. Okay. So she's directing the traffic to one source, the one source she's had a contract with, which is an incredible conflict of interest there.
That contract has expired.
It has expired, but the behavior has remained the same. This is a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. I think at the very least it is, an ethical violation. it could be construed as being collusive behavior as well. And I think this needs to be looked into deeply by the internal auditor and perhaps even the state's attorney.
Well, thank you both. I appreciate your insight into this, and I'm sure there are going to be more parts of this story, but from now, we hope that the auditor can go about starting to do her job. So, thanks for watching this episode of Open Agenda. We'll be back later this week with another new episode. All right, cool. We got it.